The Great Hall of the Galactic Council stretched across 3 miles of polished metal and crystal. Hundreds of alien beings filled the vast space, their voices creating a buzz that echoed off the curved walls. Representatives from 47 different worlds had come together for one reason. Death was coming for them all. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the back of the human section, watching the chaos unfold. His dark uniform looked plain next to the bright colors and strange materials, worn by the other species. The humans had been given seats in the cheapest section, far from the main speaking area. It was clear what the galaxy thought of Earth. The Xanthari dominated the center of the hall. These 7-foot-tall beings had ruled half the galaxy for over 1,000 years. Their leader, Admiral Corvex, stood on 4 powerful legs while his upper arms gestured at a holographic display. The image showed star system after star system going dark. "The Void Hunters have destroyed 12 more worlds this month," Admiral Corvex announced. His voice came through the translation system as a deep rumble. "They leave nothing behind. No survivors, no ruins, just empty space where planets used to be." A wave of fear rippled through the assembly. The Void Hunters had appeared from nowhere. 6 months ago, nobody knew what they wanted or where they came from. They simply arrived at a star system, destroyed everything that lived, and moved on to the next target. On the left side of the hall sat the Krillian Collective. Their crystalline bodies caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. The Krillians had developed technology that could bend reality itself. Their weapons could turn matter into energy with a thought. Yet even they seemed worried. The Krillian speaker rose from her meditation pose. Her voice sounded like wind chimes in a storm. "Our analysis shows the Void Hunters possess adaptive capabilities beyond current understanding. Each engagement reveals new tactical approaches from their forces." Captain Morrison exchanged a look with Captain Lisa Parker, who sat beside him. Parker commanded Earth's newest battleship and had seen combat in 3 different wars. Her short brown hair was streaked with gray, and her green eyes held the hard look of someone who had watched friends die. "Adaptive capabilities," Parker whispered. "That's fancy talk for saying they learn from every fight." The discussion continued for hours. Each species tried to outdo the others with tales of their military might. The Vexithari had ships that could phase through solid matter. The Drakmor possessed weapons that could ignite entire atmospheres. The Hegemony had built war machines the size of moons. But for all their boasting, Morrison could see the fear in their alien eyes. Whatever the Void Hunters were, they had these advanced civilizations running scared. Finally, the Xanthari Admiral called for proposals. "The combined fleets of our worlds number over 50,000 vessels. We must coordinate our response before more systems fall to these invaders." This was the moment Morrison had been waiting for. He stood up from his seat and began walking toward the speaking platform. The hall grew quiet as delegates noticed the human making his way forward. Whispers followed in his wake. Is that one of the primitives from Earth? What could they possibly contribute? Didn't they just achieve faster-than-light travel last century? Morrison reached the platform and activated the speaking system. His voice carried clearly across the vast hall. "Honored delegates, Earth requests permission to join the defense against the Void Hunters." The silence that followed lasted exactly 3 seconds. Then the laughter began. It started with a few chuckles from the back rows where the minor species sat. The sound spread like a wave across the assembly until the entire hall rang with alien laughter. Some delegates pointed at Morrison with appendages he couldn't identify. Others made sounds that the translation system couldn't process. Admiral Corvex raised one of his 4 arms for silence. When the laughter died down, his eyes focused on Morrison with what might have been amusement. "Human, your world has been part of galactic society for barely 50 years. Your technology is centuries behind our most basic systems. What could Earth possibly offer in this crisis?" Morrison had expected this reaction. He kept his voice steady and clear. "We offer 1 ship and 200 of our best people." The laughter erupted again, louder this time. A Drakmore delegate stood up, his scaled hide rippling with what Morrison assumed was mirth. "1 ship? We have individual vessels with crews larger than your entire space fleet." Captain Parker had joined Morrison on the platform. She stepped forward and activated her own microphone. "Our ship may not be the biggest, but it has advantages your fleets lack." The Krillian speaker's crystalline form shifted colors from blue to red. "Please enlighten us, Primitive. What advantages could your crude technology possibly possess?" Parker looked out at the sea of alien faces. "Flexibility, creativity, the ability to adapt when plans go wrong." More laughter filled the hall. The hegemony representative, a being that looked like a walking tree made of metal, spoke in a voice like grinding gears. "Adaptation is a function of advanced computing systems and superior engineering. Your species has neither." Morrison tried again. "We understand you have more ships and better weapons, but sometimes a different approach can make the difference. Our crew has experience with impossible situations." Admiral Korvex stood to his full height. "Human Morrison, your offer is noted and declined. This threat requires the combined might of advanced civilizations. Your primitive vessel would be destroyed in the first moments of any engagement." The Krillian speaker added her voice. "Return to your world, Primitive. Remain there where you will be safe while the adults handle this crisis." Morrison felt his face grow hot, but he kept his voice level. "If you change your minds, Earth stands ready to help." "We will not change our minds," Admiral Korvex replied. "This discussion is closed." As Morrison and Parker walked back to their seats, the delegates had already moved on to other topics. The humans were forgotten as quickly as they had been dismissed. Parker leaned close to Morrison's ear. "Well, that went about as expected." "Yeah," Morrison replied. "They made their choice. Now we make ours." The rest of the session focused on organizing the alien response. 50,000 ships would be divided into battle groups, each armed with the most advanced weapons their civilizations could produce. The combined firepower would be enough to crack planets in half. Admiral Korvex outlined the strategy. The main fleet would advance directly toward Void Hunter territory and engage them in open battle. With overwhelming numbers and superior technology, victory was assured. As the session ended, delegates began filing out of the Great Hall. They talked excitedly about the coming battle and their certain victory. None of them paid any attention to the 2 humans who sat quietly in the back section. Morrison and Parker waited until the hall was nearly empty before standing. They had a long journey back to Earth and important decisions to make. "Think they'll win?" Parker asked as they walked toward the exit. Morrison looked back at the empty hall where the galaxy's most powerful beings had just planned their war. "I hope so. Because if they don't, we're next on the list." They walked out into the corridor that led to the docking bays. Behind them, the great halls stood empty except for the cleaning crews. The galaxy had made its choice. Earth wasn't invited to the fight. But sometimes the best way to help is to show up anyway. The elevator descended 2 miles into the Colorado mountains before the doors opened. Admiral Robert Kane stepped out into a corridor carved from solid rock. The walls were lined with metal panels that hummed with hidden power. This place didn't exist on any public map. Kane was a big man with gray hair and hands that looked like they had built things. He had fought in Earth's last 3 wars and helped design most of the ships in the human fleet. Today, he wore a simple blue uniform with no decorations. The work they did here was too secret for medals. Captain Jake Morrison and Captain Lisa Parker followed him down the corridor. Both had arrived on Earth just hours after the Galactic Council meeting. Neither had slept on the long journey home, but their eyes were alert. What they had to discuss couldn't wait for rest. "So they laughed at us," Kane said as they walked. "Can't say I'm surprised. The galaxy sees Earth as the new kid who just learned to walk." It was worse than that, Parker replied. They treated us like children asking to play with the adults. One of them actually used the word primitive 5 times. They reached a heavy door marked with symbols that would make most people turn around and leave. Kane pressed his palm against a scanner and the door slid open. Inside was a room that looked like it belonged on a starship. Computers lined every wall, and a large table in the center showed a 3-dimensional map of local space. Dr. Helen Ross looked up from her work as they entered. She was thin and tall with black hair pulled back in a tight bun. Her lab coat was covered with coffee stains and equations written in different colored pens. She had been working for 36 hours straight and showed no signs of stopping. "How did it go?" she asked, though her expression suggested she already knew. "About as well as expected," Morrison replied. "They have 50,000 ships and weapons that can destroy planets. They don't think they need help from 200 humans in one ship." Dr. Ross nodded and turned back to her computers. "Their mistake. Show them." Kane walked to the table and activated the display. The 3-dimensional map showed a single ship floating in space. It looked ordinary at first glance. The hull was gray metal with no fancy decorations. It was about the size of a large office building, small compared to the alien warships they had seen. "This is the ESV Liberty," Kane said. "From the outside, she looks like a standard Earth cruiser. The aliens would see her and think she's just another primitive human ship." Parker moved closer to the display. The image rotated slowly, showing every angle of the vessel. "What makes her special?" Dr. Ross touched a control and the ship's hull became transparent. Inside, they could see a maze of corridors, rooms, and machinery. But something was different about the layout. Everything seemed to be connected to everything else in ways that didn't follow normal ship design. "We built her different," Dr. Ross explained. "Most ships are designed like office buildings. Each section has a specific job and stays separate from the others. If one part breaks, you lose that function." She touched another control, and colored lines appeared throughout the ship, showing power flow and system connections. The lines formed a complex web that touched every corner of the vessel. The Liberty is designed like a living organism. Every system can adapt and change based on what the ship needs. If the main engines fail, the maneuvering thrusters can be reconfigured to provide primary propulsion. If the weapons are damaged, the mining lasers can be converted for combat use. Morrison studied the display. "So she can repair herself?" "Better than that," Kane replied. "She can redesign herself during combat. The whole ship is modular. Rooms can be reconfigured, systems can be rerouted, and equipment can be moved wherever it's needed most." Dr. Ross pulled up another display showing the ship's crew quarters. Instead of the small individual rooms found on most vessels, the Liberty had larger spaces that could be divided or combined as needed. Even the living areas are flexible. If we need a medical bay, we can create one anywhere on the ship in under an hour. "The aliens build ships like monuments," Kane continued. "Beautiful, powerful, and unchanging. We built ours like a Swiss Army knife. It's whatever we need it to be." Parker walked around the table, studying the ship from different angles. "What? About the crew? You said 200 people?" A new voice answered from the doorway. "The best 200 people Earth has to offer." They turned to see Commander Alex Chen entering the room. He was shorter than average with dark hair and quick movements. His uniform was perfectly pressed despite having just arrived from a training mission. Chen had commanded ships in combat for 15 years and never lost a single engagement. "Alex," Kane said. "Good timing. We were just explaining the Liberty to our guests." Chen nodded to Morrison and Parker, then activated another section of the display. Names and faces appeared in the air around the ship's image. 200 people from dozens of different countries and backgrounds. "My first officer is Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos," Chen said, highlighting one of the faces. "She designed half the tactics Earth forces use today. Before joining the space fleet, she won every war game the Army could throw at her. Another face appeared larger in the display. This one belonged to a man with grease-stained fingers and a wide smile. Chief Engineer Danny Murphy. He can fix anything with whatever materials are available. During the Martian crisis, he kept 3 ships running using parts from a broken coffee machine. More faces joined the display as Chen continued. Dr. Karen White, our medical officer. She's saved more lives in combat than any doctor in Earth's history. Communications officer Beth Miller can hack alien computer systems in languages she doesn't even speak. They're all volunteers, Kane added. Every person on that ship chose to be there. They know the risks and they don't care. When we asked for people willing to face impossible odds, we had to turn away thousands of applicants. Dr. Ross brought up a new set of data showing test results and training scores. We've been preparing for this for 3 years. Ever since our first contact with the galactic community, we knew a threat like this might come. While other worlds were building bigger guns, we were building better people. Morrison looked at the faces surrounding the ship's image. The aliens have technology we can't match. What makes you think 200 humans can succeed where 50,000 alien ships might fail? Chen smiled for the first time since entering the room. Because they think like aliens. They follow patterns, use proven strategies, and rely on their superior technology to win battles. And we don't? Parker asked. Hell no, Chen replied. We think like humans. When the plan fails, we make a new plan. When that fails, we throw out the book and improvise. Every human who's ever lived has had to solve problems with insufficient resources and no time to do it properly. Kane walked to a wall screen and brought up historical footage. It showed Earth soldiers in a dozen different conflicts, always. Outnumbered and outgunned, finding ways to win anyway. The galaxy sees primitive technology and assumes we're weak. They don't understand that limitation breeds innovation. Our weapons aren't as powerful as theirs, Dr. Ross added. But our weapons can be anything we need them to be. Our shields aren't as strong, but they can be reconfigured in real time. Our computers aren't as fast, but they work with human intuition instead of against it. Chen pointed to the Liberty's image. This ship is designed around one simple principle. When everything goes wrong, humans get creative. The worse the situation gets, the more dangerous we become. The room fell silent as everyone studied the ship and its crew. Finally, Parker spoke up. The Galactic Council made it clear we're not invited to their war. Kane's expression hardened. Sometimes you have to crash the party. You're talking about disobeying direct orders from both Earth Command and the Galactic Government, Morrison pointed out. I'm talking about doing what's right, Kane replied. If that alien fleet fails, Earth is next on the Void Hunters list. The galaxy might not want our help, but they're going to get it anyway. Dr. Ross pulled up a star chart showing the route to Void Hunter territory. The Liberty can slip away from Earth without being detected. Our stealth systems are based on human submarine technology. We've been hiding things underwater for centuries. The alien fleet will take 3 weeks to reach the combat zone, Chen added. We can be there in 2 weeks if we push the engines. That gives us time to scout the enemy before the main battle begins. Morrison and Parker exchanged glances. Both had spent their careers following orders and respecting chain of command. What Kane was suggesting went against everything they had been taught about military discipline, but both had also sworn an oath to protect Earth and humanity. Sometimes protecting people meant breaking rules. What do you need from us? Morrison asked. Officially, nothing, Kane replied. You never heard about this meeting. The Liberty is going on a routine training mission to the outer system. What happens after that is between us and history. Parker nodded slowly. And unofficially? Chen stepped forward. If we succeed, make sure people know we tried. If we fail, make sure someone learns from our mistakes. The meeting ended with handshakes and quiet words of encouragement. Morrison and Parker left the way they came, taking the long elevator ride back to the surface. They would return to their normal duties and pretend this conversation never happened. Behind them, Kane, Chen, and Dr. Ross continued planning HUM. The combined alien fleet stretched across 1,000 miles of space. 50,000 ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming in the light of distant stars. It was the largest military force the galaxy had ever assembled, and Admiral Corvex felt proud as he watched from the bridge of his flagship. The Zenthari dreadnought Eternal Glory was 3 miles long and armed with enough weapons to level a continent. Its bridge sat at the top of the vessel like a crown, surrounded by armor plating that could withstand the explosion of a small star. Corvex stood at the command station, all 4 of his arms working different controls as he coordinated the massive fleet. "Fleet status report," he commanded in his deep voice. Commander Thex, his second-in-command, consulted a holographic display. "All vessels reporting ready, Admiral. The Krillian Collective has positioned their reality benders at the fleet's center. The Vexthari phase ships are screening our flanks. Hegemony Fortress ships anchor the rear formation." Corvex nodded his massive head. Each species brought their greatest strengths to this battle. The Krillians could manipulate matter and energy with their crystalline technology. The Vexthari possessed ships that could become solid or insubstantial at will. The Hegemony had built mobile fortresses with armor so thick that nothing short of a supernova could scratch them. On the main view screen, the fleet extended in all directions. Zenthari dreadnoughts formed the backbone of the formation, their weapon arrays glowing with contained power. Between them darted smaller vessels from dozens of different worlds, each adding their own capabilities to the combined force. "Time to target?" Corvex asked. 18 hours at current speed, replied the navigation officer. "The Void Hunter fleet is maintaining position at the edge of the Kepler system." Corvex studied the tactical display. Intelligence reports showed roughly 50 enemy vessels, each comparable to a heavy cruiser in size and firepower. Against their overwhelming numbers, the Void Hunters seemed almost insignificant. "They must be insane to face us with so few ships," Commander Thex observed. "Insanity or desperation," Corvex agreed. "Either way, this battle will be over quickly." 2 sectors away, on the bridge of the Krillian vessel Song of Crystal Winds, High Coordinator Zixthara meditated on the approaching battle. Her crystalline body caught the bridge lighting and scattered it into rainbow patterns that danced across the walls. The other Krillian crew members maintained similar poses, their minds linked in perfect harmony. The Krillians had developed beyond the need for crude physical weapons. Their ships could restructure reality itself, turning enemy vessels into harmless clouds of gas or converting their attacks into flowers. They were beings of pure intellect and advanced science, far beyond the primitive violence that plagued younger species. "The probability matrices show a 97% chance of victory," reported her tactical coordinator. The words came not through sound, but through direct mental connection. "The enemy's adaptive capabilities are impressive, but they lack sufficient numerical advantage to overcome our combined forces." Zixthara's form shifted from blue to purple as she considered the data. "Monitor their behavior patterns carefully. We must understand their adaptation methods to prevent future encounters." "Of course, High Coordinator, our analysis systems are recording all enemy actions for later study." The Krillian ships moved like living things through space, their hulls changing shape to optimize for different functions. When they needed more speed, they became longer and thinner. When they required stronger shields, they compressed into dense spheres of crystalline matter. To them, the fixed-form ships of other species seemed crude and inflexible. In the 3rd sector, Captain Rex of the Vexthari phase ship Ethereal Passage watched the alien formations through sensors that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously. His people had learned to exist partially outside normal space-time, giving them abilities that seemed like magic to other species. The bridge of his ship flickered between solid and translucent as the crew prepared for battle. Vexthari technology. allowed them to phase through enemy attacks and strike from unexpected angles. They were the fleet's scouts and harassers, designed to confuse and disorient the enemy while the heavier ships delivered killing blows. "Phase variance is optimal," reported his first officer, a being who appeared to be made of shifting shadows. "We can maintain ethereal state for 6 hours of continuous combat." Captain Rex nodded, his form solidifying briefly before fading. Back to translucency. "Coordinate with the Zenthari heavy units. We will create openings for their primary weapons." The Vexthari had fought the Void Hunters once before, 3 months ago near the Outer Rim. Their ship had barely escaped that encounter, and Rex still remembered the strange way the enemy had adapted to their phasing abilities. By the end of that battle, the Void Hunters were somehow tracking his ship even while it existed outside normal space. But now they had the combined might of the galaxy behind them. Whatever tricks the Void Hunters possessed, they would be overwhelmed by sheer numbers and firepower. At the rear of the formation, the Hegemony Fortress ships moved like mobile planets. Each vessel was 20 miles across and carried enough weapons to outfit an entire battle fleet. Commander Unit 7742 monitored the approach from within the central core of Fortress Prime, his mechanical body plugged directly into the ship's control systems. The Hegemony had long ago replaced their biological forms with perfected mechanical bodies. They thought in terms of efficiency and optimization, viewing war as a mathematical problem to be solved through superior firepower and tactical analysis. "Combat calculations complete," reported Unit 7742's tactical subprocessor. "Enemy destruction. Probability exceeds acceptable parameters. Estimated engagement duration, 47 minutes. Confirmed," Unit 7742 replied through the ship's communication system. "All Fortress units prepare for standard bombardment pattern. Maximum firepower, minimum exposure time." The Hegemony strategy was simple and brutal. Their Fortress ships would maintain maximum range and pour devastating fire into the enemy formation until nothing remained. They had used this approach successfully for over 2,000 years. As the combined fleet continued its advance, communication channels buzzed with coordination between the different species. Targeting data flowed between ships, creating an integrated fire control network that could focus the firepower of thousands of vessels on a single target. Admiral Corvex monitored the chatter with satisfaction. For all their differences, the galaxy's civilizations worked well together when faced with a common threat. The Void Hunters had made a serious mistake in challenging the established order. "Long-range sensors are detecting the enemy fleet," reported the sensor operator. 53 vessels, arranged in defensive formation around the 4th planet of the Kepler system. Corvex studied the tactical display as enemy ship positions appeared. The Void Hunter vessels looked strange, their hulls seeming to shift and change even while stationary. They showed no obvious weapon ports or defensive systems, but intelligence reports suggested they were heavily armed. "Begin final approach," he commanded. "All ships, battle stations." Throughout the fleet, crews prepared for combat, weapons powered up, shields strengthened, and targeting systems locked onto enemy positions. The combined firepower of 50,000, ships focused on fewer than 60 targets. Unknown to the alien fleet, a single human vessel shadowed their advance from a distance of several light years. The ESV Liberty used passive sensors to monitor the massive formation while maintaining complete communication silence. On the Liberty's bridge, Commander Alex Chen watched the alien fleet through enhanced telescopic displays. The sight was impressive, even at this distance. The combined fleet represented the pinnacle of galactic military power, a force that could conquer entire star systems without significant effort. "They're confident," observed Lieutenant Commander Maria Santos from her position at the tactical station. "Look at that formation. They're not even bothering with advanced screening patterns." Chief Engineer Danny Murphy looked up from his console. "Can't say I blame them. 50,000 against 50? I'd be feeling pretty good about those odds, too. Chen nodded, but kept studying the display. Something about the alien approach bothered him, though he couldn't identify exactly what. The formation was textbook perfect, the coordination flawless, and the firepower overwhelming. By all military logic, the Void Hunters didn't stand a chance. "Continue monitoring," he ordered. "Record everything. If this goes bad, someone needs to understand what went wrong." The alien fleet continued its advance toward what seemed like certain victory. Behind them, invisible and forgotten, a single human ship prepared to witness the galaxy's greatest military disaster. In 18 hours, everything the galaxy thought it knew about warfare would change forever. The assembled might of 47 worlds was about to learn that sometimes numbers and technology aren't enough. Sometimes the enemy refuses to play by the rules that made you strong in the first place. The first shots came without warning. One moment, the Void Hunter ships sat motionless in space around the Kepler system's fourth planet. The next moment, they were everywhere at once, appearing behind, beside, and sometimes inside the alien formation. "Admiral." Korvax felt his confidence shatter as alarms screamed across the bridge of the eternal glory. The tactical display showed impossible readings. Enemy contacts were materializing in locations that should have been empty space, their weapons already firing before his sensors could lock onto them. "Report!" he shouted over the chaos. Commander Thex worked frantically at his station, trying to make sense of the sensor data. "Enemy vessels they're not following standard movement patterns, Admiral. They appear to be teleporting directly into our formation." A Void Hunter ship materialized 300 meters off the Glory's starboard side. It was smaller than the Zenthari dreadnought, but moved with fluid grace that seemed to mock the rigid geometry of normal spacecraft design. Its hull rippled like water, constantly changing shape and surface texture. The enemy vessel fired something that wasn't quite energy and wasn't quite matter directly into the Glory's primary shield generator. The shields, designed to withstand the combined firepower of entire fleets, simply ceased to exist. Not destroyed or overloaded, they just stopped being there. "Impossible," breathed the shield operator. "The generator is still functioning, but there's nothing for it to generate." Korvax watched in horror as similar scenes played out across his fleet. Zenthari dreadnoughts, Krillian crystal ships, and Vexithari phase vessels were all being engaged by enemies that seemed to ignore basic physics. Void Hunter ships moved through solid matter as if it were empty space, fired weapons that deleted defensive systems rather than destroying them, and adapted to every tactic within minutes of first encountering it. The Krillian vessel song of Crystal Winds tried to use its reality manipulation technology against the nearest Void Hunter ship. High Coordinator Zixathara focused her will through the ship's crystalline core, attempting to transform the enemy vessel into harmless mineral dust. The Void Hunter ship absorbed the reality-warping energy like a sponge. For a brief moment, it did begin to change into dust. Then it reversed the process, not only restoring itself but somehow redirecting the transformation back at the Krillian vessel. "Impossible," Zixthara whispered as she watched her own ship begin to crumble. "They're using our own capabilities against us." The Song of Crystal Winds started to dissolve from the inside out. Emergency systems activated throughout the ship as the crew realized their most powerful weapon had been turned into their greatest weakness. Captain Rex of the Ethereal Passage tried a different approach. His ship phased out of normal space-time, becoming ethereal and untouchable. The Vexithari had used this ability to escape countless battles over the centuries. Nothing could harm a ship that didn't fully exist in the same dimension as its attackers. The Void Hunter ship pursuing him followed directly into the ethereal dimension. Somehow, it had learned to phase just by watching the Vexithari vessel do it once. Worse, it seemed more comfortable in the ethereal realm than the passage itself. "They're adapting to our abilities in real time," Rex reported over the communication system. Whatever we do, they learn to do it better. In the rear of the formation, the hegemony fortress ships opened fire with every weapon they possessed. Thousands of energy beams, particle streams, and exotic matter projectiles filled space with destructive force. The volume of fire was enough to sterilize entire star systems. The Void Hunter ships moved through the barrage like dancers, their hulls rippling and flowing to deflect attacks that should have annihilated them. When direct deflection wasn't possible, they seemed to absorb the incoming energy and redirect it back at their attackers. Commander Unit 7742 watched his calculations crumble as his supposedly invincible fortress came under attack from weapons that used his own firepower against him. "This does not compute," he reported with mechanical precision. "Enemy capabilities exceed all known parameters." The battle continued for 23 minutes. In that time, the galaxy's greatest military force was systematically dismantled by an enemy that refused to follow any known rules of warfare. Ships that had never known defeat were destroyed by weapons they couldn't understand. Tactics that had worked for millennia became useless against an enemy that learned and adapted faster than thought. Light years away, the crew of the ESV Liberty watched the massacre through their passive sensors. The bridge was silent, except for the quiet hum of electronics and the occasional whispered curse from someone who couldn't believe what they were seeing. "Jesus," breathed Communications Officer Beth Miller. "They're getting slaughtered." Commander Chen stood motionless at his command station, his eyes fixed on the tactical display. Red icons representing destroyed Allied ships multiplied faster than he could count them. In 20 minutes, the galaxy had lost more military vessels than in the previous century of conflicts combined. "Sir?" called sensor operator Tony Garcia from his station. "I'm reading massive energy surges from the alien fleet. I think they're trying to retreat." Chen nodded grimly. "Can you blame them?" Lieutenant Commander Santos was analyzing the battle data as it came in. Her tactical training helped her see patterns that others might miss, but what she found didn't make sense according to any military doctrine she knew. "The Void Hunters aren't just winning," she reported. "They're learning. Each time the aliens try a new tactic, the enemy adapts to it faster than before. By the end of each engagement, they're not just defending against the attack, they're using improved versions of it." Dr. Karen White looked up from her medical station where she had been monitoring casualty reports. "How many survivors?" "Hard to tell from this distance," Garcia replied, "but based on the number of life pods and emergency beacons, maybe 30% of the original fleet." Chen did the math in his head. 35,000 ships destroyed in less than half an hour. The galaxy's military power had been cut by more than half in a single engagement. Chief Engineer Murphy was studying the technical data from the battle. His trained eye caught details that pure military analysis might miss. "Skip, look at this. The way these Void Hunter ships move and adapt, it's not just advanced technology." "What do you mean?" Chen asked. Murphy highlighted sections of the sensor data on his display. "Watch how they respond to different attacks. When the Zenthari used brute force weapons, the Void Hunters developed stronger armor. When the Krillians used reality manipulation, the enemy learned to manipulate reality better. When the Vexathari tried phasing, the Void Hunters became better at phasing." Santos leaned over to study Murphy's analysis. "You're saying they don't have fixed capabilities. They develop new ones, based on what they encounter." "Exactly. They're not just adapting tactics. They're evolving their entire technological base in real time during combat. The implications hit everyone on the bridge at the same time. If the Void Hunters could learn and improve any capability they encountered, then bigger fleets and better weapons would only make them stronger. That's why they let the galaxy organize this massive response," Chen realized. "They wanted to face our best technology all at once so they could learn from it." The retreating alien fleet was limping away from the Kepler system, their formations broken and their confidence shattered. The survivors would carry news of the defeat back to their home worlds, but the galaxy's military leaders would struggle to understand what had gone wrong. Chen made a decision that would change the course of the war. Helm. Plot a course for the Kepler system. Best possible speed. The bridge crew stared at him in shock. Ensign Julie Hayes at the helm station was the first to speak. "Sir, are you ordering us to engage the enemy?" "That's exactly what I'm ordering." Santos turned from her station to face the commander. "Sir, with respect, we just watched 50,000 ships get destroyed by these things. What can one human vessel possibly accomplish?" Chen looked around the bridge at his crew. These were people he had trained with, fought beside, and trusted with his life. They deserved an honest answer. The aliens lost because they fought the way aliens fight. Rigid formations, predetermined tactics, reliance on superior technology. Every time they tried something, the Void Hunters learned from it and did it better. Murphy nodded slowly as he began to understand. "But we don't fight like aliens." "No, we don't. We fight like humans. We improvise, we adapt, we change our approach when something isn't working. Most importantly, we don't rely on our technology being better than the enemy's." Dr. White spoke up from her station. "Alex, even if our approach gives us an advantage, we're still talking about 50 enemy ships against one. 50 enemy ships that just spent half an hour learning how to fight like the galaxy's most advanced civilizations," Chen replied. "They've adapted to energy weapons, reality manipulation, phasing technology, and every other trick the aliens could throw at them." Hayes was checking the navigation computer. "Course plotted, sir. At maximum burn, we can reach the Kepler system in 6 hours. Chen moved to the center of the bridge, where he could see every station. "Here's what they haven't encountered yet. A ship that can be anything it needs to be, crewed by people who specialize in making things up as they go along." Santos was running combat simulations. The ESV Liberty dropped out of hyperspace in the exact center of the Void Hunter formation. For a split second, 50 alien vessels and one human ship stared at each other across the vacuum of space. Then all hell broke loose. Commander Chen had exactly 3 seconds to implement his battle plan before the enemy could react. His plan was simple. There was no plan. "Murphy, reroute all power to the tractor beam array," he shouted. "Garcia, target that big piece of debris at bearing 27 Mark 4. Hayes, full reverse thrust the moment we make contact." The crew reacted without question, their hands flying over controls as they executed orders that made no tactical sense. The Liberty's tractor beam locked onto a chunk of wreckage from the earlier battle, a piece of Zenthari armor plating the size of a city block. Chief Engineer Murphy had diverted so much power to the tractor beam that the ship's lights dimmed. "We're pulling more juice than the system was designed for, Skip. This is either going to work perfectly or fry every circuit on the ship." "Good enough," Chen replied. "Fire thrusters." The Liberty shot backward while maintaining its grip on the massive debris chunk. The alien wreckage swung around like a giant club, smashing directly into the nearest Void Hunter vessel. The impact sent both ships tumbling through space in a shower of sparks and twisted metal. The remaining 49 Void Hunter ships immediately began adapting to this new tactic. Their hulls shifted and hardened, preparing to resist similar impacts. Tractor beam systems appeared on their weapon arrays as they prepared to use the human strategy against the Liberty. But Chen was already 3 moves ahead. "Cut the tractor beam. Santos, launch every mine we have, but program them with the nursery rhyme subroutines." Lieutenant Commander Santos looked up from her tactical station with confusion. "Sir, the nursery rhyme subroutines? Those are just test programs we use for computer diagnostics." "Trust me," Chen replied. "Murphy, can you make the mines sing?" The chief engineer's face split into a wide grin. "Aye, sir. How loud do you want them?" "Loud enough to wake the dead." Throughout space around the Liberty, dozens of small mines deployed and began broadcasting "Mary Had a Little Lamb" at frequencies that could be heard across the entire electromagnetic spectrum. But these weren't normal broadcasts. Murphy had programmed each mine to sing in a different key, at different tempos, with random pauses and acceleration. The effect on the Void Hunter ships was immediate and dramatic. Their adaptive systems, designed to analyze patterns and develop countermeasures, began trying to decode the seemingly random musical broadcasts. Processing power that should have been focused on combat was instead devoted to understanding why. Humans were singing about sheep in the middle of a battle. They're trying to figure out if it's some kind of code, Santos reported, watching her tactical displays. Half their ships have stopped maneuvering. Their targeting systems are focusing on the mines instead of us. Chen nodded. Miller, open a channel to the enemy fleet. All frequencies. Communications Officer Beth Miller looked up in surprise. Sir, we don't even know if they speak any human languages. Doesn't matter. Broadcast everything we've got. Pop music, classical, death metal, country, folk songs, advertising jingles. Make it random and make it loud. The vacuum of space around the Kepler system suddenly filled with the entire history of human music. Elvis Presley sang about hound dogs while Beethoven's symphonies played over radio commercials for breakfast cereal. The cacophony was overwhelming even to human ears. The Void Hunter ships reacted like computers encountering a logic paradox. Their adaptive systems were designed to find patterns and learn from them, but human music followed rules that seemed to change with every song. Just when their analysis programs thought they understood rhythm, jazz improvisation would shatter their assumptions. When they adapted to melody, death metal would assault them with pure noise. Their formation is breaking up, Garcia reported from sensors. Ships are moving erratically, almost like they're confused. Dr. Helen Ross, monitoring. The battle from her science station was recording everything for later analysis. They're trying to adapt to chaos, she observed. But chaos isn't a pattern you can learn. It's the absence of pattern. The nearest Void Hunter ship had recovered enough to launch an attack on the Liberty. Its weapons systems had adapted during the earlier battle, incorporating energy types and firing patterns learned from the Galactic fleet. The beam that lanced toward the human ship should have been instantly fatal. Instead, it struck empty space. The Liberty had moved 3 seconds before the enemy fired, not because of superior sensors or faster reflexes, but because Ensign Hayes had gotten bored maintaining position and decided to drift a little to the left while listening to the music. Hayes, Chen called out. What the hell was that maneuver? The young helmsman looked embarrassed. Sorry, sir. The music was getting to me. I just felt like we should be moving more. Perfect. Keep doing that. But more so. For the next 10 minutes, the Liberty danced through space with no pattern or purpose beyond the whims of its pilot. Hayes moved the ship based on what felt right, what looked interesting, or simply because she was tired of going in the same direction. It was flying by pure human instinct, and it was driving the Void Hunter targeting systems insane. Every time the enemy ships tried to predict the Liberty's movement, Hayes would do something completely different. When they adapted to her tendency to dodge left, she started spinning. When they compensated for her spinning, she flew straight up for no reason. When they tried to track her random movements, she began flying in perfect geometric patterns that lasted exactly long enough for them to adapt before becoming chaos again. Meanwhile, Murphy was working miracles in engineering. Every few minutes, Chen would call down with a new impossible request, and Murphy would somehow make it happen. Murphy, can you make our hull look like a Void Hunter ship? Give me 5 minutes and a really good cup of coffee. Murphy, I need the navigation deflectors to work like weapons. Which kind of weapons, Skip? Surprise me. The Liberty began changing during the battle, its modular systems reconfiguring themselves based on whatever crazy idea Chen came up with next. Sensor arrays became improvised weapons. Life support systems were converted into signal jammers. Even the coffee machines were repurposed as electronic warfare devices. Dr. White was treating injuries in sickbay when she got a call from the bridge. Doc, we need you to modify the medical scanners to detect enemy weak points. Alex, medical. Scanners are designed to find biological problems. These ships are mechanical, Same principle, different application. You're looking for systemic failures instead of organ damage. White stared at her equipment for a moment, then began rewiring the systems with the help of her medical team. Within minutes, they had created an improvised vulnerability scanner that could identify critical system nodes on enemy ships. The battle raged for over an hour, but it wasn't like any battle in recorded history. The Liberty didn't try to outfight the Void Hunters or out-tech them. Instead, it out-crazied them. Every time the enemy adapted to one impossible tactic, the humans would switch to something even more ridiculous. When the Void Hunters learned to defend against tractor beam attacks, the Liberty started using its garbage disposal system as a weapon. When they adapted to random music broadcasts, the humans began reciting poetry mixed with sports commentary. When they figured out how to track Hayes's random flying, Murphy started venting atmosphere in patterns that spelled out curse words in 12 different languages. The turning point came when Petty Officer Rick Santos in the weapons bay had an idea that would have gotten him court-martialed in any sane military organization. "What if we shoot our own escape pods at them?" "That's crazy," replied Gunner's mate Lisa Park. "Exactly. The Liberty began launching escape pods loaded with everything from spare parts to someone's lunch. The pods weren't weapons, but they confused the Void Hunter defensive systems because nothing in their experience suggested that humans would shoot their own life rafts at enemy ships. One pod, filled with Chief Murphy's collection of technical manuals, somehow triggered a cascade failure in a Void Hunter vessel's adaptive matrix. The ship began trying to transform itself into a repair manual and promptly suffered a complete system breakdown. "How the hell did that work?" Chen demanded. Murphy was studying the readings from engineering. "Near as I can tell, Skip, we confused it to death." As the battle continued, more Void Hunter ships began experiencing similar failures. Their adaptive systems, designed to learn from patterns and counter them, were breaking down when faced with pure human randomness. Some ships simply stopped functioning. Others began adapting in completely wrong directions, turning their weapons into gardening tools or converting their hulls into musical instruments. The enemy fleet that had destroyed 50,000 Galactic warships was being systematically defeated by 200 humans who refused to make sense. Finally, after 90 minutes of impossible combat, the surviving Void Hunter ships did something that shocked everyone watching. They retreated. Ships that had never shown fear in the face of overwhelming odds were running from a single human vessel. As the enemy fleet disappeared into hyperspace, the Liberty hung alone in the Debbie,